Hi everyone, and happy holidays from Creative 360. You're here to paint Silent Night with me, this lovely holiday scene. It's a very quick and simple painting, but it really is quite beautiful. You've either picked up a kit from Creative 360 and you'll have everything you need in that kit to do this painting, or you may be using your own supplies. So in just a minute I'm going to go through exactly what you need to have on hand so that you can work through this painting with me. So for this particular painting, we don't need a lot of different colors. Obviously, we're going to need some black, and I've actually purchased a matte black for you, not a glossy black that's in your kit. You can use a glossy black, but the matte's really nice because it kind of then showcases the picture. It's a nice background for the picture. You're going to need some kind of blue. You're going to need white. You're going to need some kind of yellow. And you're going to need some kind of brown. Most of these colors as we use them are diluted with white, and so if you don't have exactly the same colors I'm using, it'll still turn out really nicely. I'm going to be painting on a 16 by 20 inch canvas, and I'm going to be painting on the horizontal. You can do this on a smaller canvas if you'd like. It's really not a horizontal painting, and so you could even do this on a canvas that was square. You're going to need a larger flat brush to do the background. You're going to need a medium-sized round brush. You're going to need a smaller detail brush. And if you got the kit from us, you probably have this kind of rough-looking medium round brush. This is really nice for doing some of the dry brushing around the edge, but you can use your medium round brush at home if you're using your own brushes. You're going to need plenty of paper towels, which you can see I have here. You're going to need some water to rinse off your brushes. You're also going to need a paper plate or something that you can use to trace the outline of the glowing circle. A dinner plate works nicely, a paper plate, just something that's round. And if you've gotten your materials from us, you have a small cutout of the little manger. But if you're doing this on your own, you can see it's really just a trapezoid, kind of a modified rectangle. So my guess is you can figure out how to sketch that in yourself. So get all your paints together and we'll get started painting the background. All right, let's get started. Make sure that you've protected the area that you're painting in. Remember that with acrylic paints, they wipe off really easily while they're still wet. But if they get on your clothing or any kind of cloth, your carpet, once they're dry, they're really hard to get off. So you might want to protect the area you're working on. So we're going to get started with the background. If you're painting flat on a surface, this actually works better. I'm going to put my paint on a paper plate, but if you're working flat, you can actually just dribble your paint right on the canvas and go from there. We need enough black in the background so that we've covered up all the white of the canvas. But it's actually better if we do this with two thinner coats than one really thick coat because it'll dry faster. But go ahead and get yourself plenty of black. And again, we're just going to cover this whole canvas with this flat black. You want to make sure that you get the sides of the canvas as well, because when you hang this guy on the wall, if you do the sides, the bottom and the top of the canvas, you won't even have to frame it. It'll look really nice hanging on the wall on its own. Now keep in mind that I've got some bright lights shining on me here, and so this probably looks really glossy to you, but you can see if I tip it towards you, this is just the flat black. So again, we're going to cover this whole canvas, and then we're going to need this to dry before we can go on to the next step. You can use a hair dryer if you'd like to dry this canvas, to get this paint dry. That's actually kind of nice because you'll see right away if there's some spots where you didn't get quite enough paint on and the canvas is peeking through. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this video off while you finish doing your background, and when I come back, we're going to have a nice dry black canvas background and we'll be ready to start the picture part of this. Welcome back. If I look a little darker with a little less light around, it's because I turned the one set of lights off so that you're not going to get this glare on the painting. So I think you're going to be able to see better. Hopefully your canvas is all colored in black now and dry. I turned out I didn't need two coats on mine. I did find a few spots where the black hadn't covered all the way. And in fact, I'm gonna bring this closer. I'm not even sure you can see. There are still a few areas in here that probably could have used another coat of black paint. But I'm feeling pretty good about it because I know that most of the spots I'm seeing are in the area where I'm going to be doing that really bright circle, and so I'm not too worried about it. Again, if you are concerned about that, you just put another coat on this canvas and let it dry, and then get ready to do this next part. So now we want to place kind of the big circle. Let me grab the painting so you can see. What we're tracing with our paper plate is really this inner big circle, right? Now, I want you to notice that I know there's black down here, but we actually go over the circle again. So don't worry, you're actually going to be doing a pure circle. And what I want you to notice is that it really is in the center of the canvas. I've got just as much here as I do here. I have just as much on the top as I do on the bottom. It may be a little closer to the bottom than to the top. We do want to leave some room for the star, so maybe a scotch down from the top. So we're going to take that paper plate and we're going to trace the outline of that circle that we're going to do with a pencil. So let me grab my paper plate and I'm going to place it again. This is dead center right here. I know it seems weird because I'm on an angle, but I'm going to move it down slightly because again, I want the major to cover that up and I want room for my star. Now you might be saying, well, that seems too small, Laura. Right, we're just doing that inner part of the circle. We're tracing that's gonna be all solid. We're gonna do rings around it that are gonna give us that glowy look. So again, go ahead and get that kind of as even as you can. And I'm gonna trace around this. This is where working on a flat table is probably actually better than an easel. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of easels. I really like to work with my canvas flat on a table. So you can see there's my pencil ring. Now it just looks like a scary horror picture, huh? So we're gonna start there. And then we're gonna get ready at this next point to do that center part of the circle. So make sure that your circle's in the place that you want it. You can reposition it if you want. And then we're gonna get ready to mix paint to do the center part of the circle. You're gonna need your white paint and you're gonna need the yellow paint. And you're gonna need a teeny tiny bit of the brown paint. So when we come back, be ready to mix those paints. Okay, so we're getting ready to mix paint, but I wanna talk a little bit about the brush you're gonna use next. It's going to be easier for you to use your big flat brush again, but I need you to be careful because you were using black paint with this and it's really hard to get it out of there. And you don't want any black paint in this white part we're doing. I've scrubbed this brush like crazy, and when I tap the top of it on a paper towel, you can see I'm still getting dark paint on this. So I would probably want to wash this even more if I was going to use this brush again. Otherwise, you might want to use your medium round brush. It'll take a little bit longer, but I think you're going to be happier with the results. So either really get this brush clean, or you might want to use a new brush. Okay, we're ready to mix colors. Now the center of that circle is kind of a really pale yellow. So you can see on my plate, actually you can't again, I have a lot of white, I have a teeny dab of yellow and a teeny dab of brown. A little bit of color is going to go a long way on this. So you really want to start with just the tiniest little smidge of the yellow mixed in with the white. So I'm literally getting like the corner of my brush. That's it. That's all. And I'm going to start to mix that into the white. Now, you'll look and you'll say, well, that's not enough. Well, great. You can get more. It's harder to go back, though. It's really hard to get lighter. So I'm going to keep mixing in tiny bits of that yellow until I kind of have that creamy color that I'm looking for, right? I'm starting to get that. Now, you might be happy with it the way it is. You can see it looks a little peachy, and I like that. If you want it to look a little warmer, go ahead and mix some of the brown in. But I'm pretty happy with this peachy color you can see that I have with the yellow and the white. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill this circle in with that. Now, this should cover pretty well. And remember, your canvas needs to be 100% dry before you move on to this step. So we're probably going to give this center of the circle 2 coats. Don't worry if you haven't mixed enough of this paint, because you'll get this close to the same thing next time. And also don't worry if you're making a perfect circle, because remember we're going to do that smudgy stuff on the outside, and so it doesn't need to be a perfect circle at all. We just want to get it kind of filled in, particularly towards the center, because we're not going to be doing any other color work in that center. So I'm mixing a little bit more to go in here. I know it's probably really hard for you to tell on this video, but I would say that the color I'm working here right now is kind of a real creamy white, almost a beigey color. And I'm going to go ahead and get this one coat on, going all the way around, right? And that, remember, this is the very center of the circle, and we're probably going to want to go out a little bit farther. So I'm going to take a little more, mix a little bit more of this, and I'm probably going to go another brush width outside of my circle. But I'm not going to do it 100% round. What am I talking about? Well, let me show you our example. You can see in our example, if I can get real close, that it really isn't a perfect circle. It's kind of a little bit oval on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here with my paint, and I'm going to add just a little bit more kind of on this top area. Not a lot. It's still mostly circular, but I'm going to go a little bit higher here with that. See what I'm saying? Just a little bit higher. Again, that kind of gives it that nice, kind of draws the eye up towards the star in the painting, if we give it that little bit of lift. Now, notice you probably can't tell, so I'll pull this closer. I'm not worried about, it'll focus in, having really crisp edges on this, right? I'm not worried about that, because we're going to be going around with the different colors to give that halo version as well. I'm going to maybe go back in the center again. This is going to take 2 coats, and your second coat's going to look much better if you let the first coat dry first. So I'm going to go ahead and let this coat dry. I'm going to turn the video off so you can as well. Let this coat dry. Maybe go get yourself another cup of tea if you haven't, if you finished that first one that you brought. And when this is dry, I'm going to give it a second coat, and then we'll go on from there. Welcome back. So I put another coat on mine. It could probably stand one more, but I think I'm good to go with it. I kind of like the rough look to it. So we're to the point right now where we're going to do these circles here around. And what I want you to know, I want you to see when I hold this closer up, is that these circles let a little bit of the black through, right? Do you see that? So that it's almost like you would imagine with a glow that it gets kind of lighter and lighter as it moves away from the center, right? And this is kind of the center of our glow. So you'll notice that we're going to start with this first ring, and it's a little bit more yellow than the middle, and we're also going to use less paint. And I'm telling you, the trick to this is to just go. You don't want to be too neat. You really, again, it shouldn't be even and uniform. It's a glow. So I've got some more white here on my plate, and I've got this medium brush that I told you has kind of got the weird texture to it, the more texture to it. That's the one we're going to like the best for this. And so we're going to go ahead and take that medium brush with the white. I'm going to mix some yellow in, but more yellow this time, right? Because that's really the kind of the glow is very yellowy around there. And I'm going to get a lot of the paint off my brush, right? So when you do this, you don't want a lot of paint on your brush. And I'm just going to go around and around in this. And again, just go with it, right? Don't be so worried about if it's a circle. We're just going around and around. And you'll notice if maybe you need more color to it. I'm seeing here that I could probably stand to have a little more yellow in this because it's looking a little bit too much like my center. So I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow in. Oh, yep, I like that. That's good. Right. So, and you'll notice that as I go around, it's there's some areas that are a little bit more yellow than others. Others are a little bit more white. That's perfect. That's what we want. Right. And remember, we're going all the way around because we're going to cover that bottom up when we do the major. And we're going to overlap this blue and this yellow. So you can go a little farther out than you think you need to go on this because you're going to overlap the blue layers. I'm going to grab a little bit more yellow. I'm going to move in towards the middle too. We just don't need to go just on the outside. And again, this technique, it's not 100% what I would call a dry brush, because I do still have quite a bit of wet paint on the brush. But you can see, I mean, part of that rough texture that we're getting is because we're wiping a lot of the paint off the brush. You can see I go into the paint, I get it all on my brush, but then I'm kind of wiping it off over on this other side before I get in here on the painting. We really want those spaces where a little bit of the dark shines through and gives it that translucence. That translucence should probably like kind of ease its way out. So maybe a little bit more black is showing through on the outer parts of the ring than on the inner parts of the ring. Right? And again, we want to leave room for our star, so that'll kind of maybe be your telltale whether you've gone far enough. Right? So just go with it. Put some nice music on and just go around and around. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. I know it's really hard for you to see the detail in it. If I bring it close, you can probably see it. So again, you can see that it's pretty rough around there, but that's exactly what I want. I don't want it to be even or anything like that. It's a glow, right? It's supposed to look like a glow. So we want this to dry, but we're not going to need to let it get completely dry like we did that middle layer or that background, because we do want a little bit of blending in of these two. But we're going to give it a few minutes to dry, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get the blue layer in. Okay, we're back and we're ready to do the blue layer. Now, just like I said with the yellow, a little bit goes a long way. It's even more so with the blue, because that blue is a lot brighter a color. So you can see I have this tiny dab of blue. If you'll notice, I'm using the same plate I mixed the yellow on. I just put in another big pile of white right here. I'm not worried if a little bit of yellow gets mixed in. Now, I certainly wouldn't do this. You'll notice I'm not mixing it on top of where I had the yellow paint, because I don't want any green. But I'm not worried about these blending in. I'm going to be blending on the outsides anyway. So again, you're going to use that really rough brush. Make sure it's pretty dry. Make sure it's clean and it's pretty dried off. Just a tiny dab of the blue, mixing in. And you can see even just that, that tiny dab of blue, right, gives me quite a bit of color. So again, I'm going to pull a little bit more in. And remember, you can always add white in to go around. So I've got that kind of baby blue color going here, and I'm going to try that out and see what I think about that. And I like it. I'm sure you can't tell, but because the canvas is kind of bright because of these lights, but it's just blue-ish, right? It's not super blue, but you get to pick. So I'm going to start with this kind of baby blue color and go around. Again, same thing we did before, just little strokes. There's a little bit of an overlap between what we did before. Remember, we're going to go over this bottom part when we do the manger, but kind of a semi-dry brush as I go around. Some folks would probably enjoy doing this round part with that big flat brush that we have, and you could do that. In fact, it would give you a little bit of a cleaner look than this, not quite so this kind of dry look. So you could just grab your big flat brush that you use to do the background. I'll kind of give you an idea. Mine's sitting in the water, but I have another one here. So if you used the flat brush, right, you can see that I would actually use this edge of it to go around, and then you could kind of dry brush it in. It kind of depends on just what feels good for you. But add a little bit more white in here. A little bit more blue. Remember, we do want to kind of go over the edges, right? You don't want it to look like stripes, and so I'm going to mix a little tiny bit of blue kind of coming into the yellow, so it doesn't look like that one just ends and the other begins. Right, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think, again, your choice. if you want to go farther around. Also, another trick for getting a smoother edge around that halo, if you want more of a smooth edge, is you get a little water on your brush, because that'll thin the paint out a little bit and it'll give you a smoother edge as you go around. I kind of like this rough edge because I feel like it looks more like the light is diffusing as we go around. Now don't overdo it. I have a tendency to do that when I paint, believe me. Sometimes I just need to put my brush down. So, but take a step back, right, and see if you like the look of it. I'm noticing I need a little bit more in here. I'm just gonna pick up some of the paint that's already on the canvas and move it around some. Maybe a little bit more over here. Looks like I could use a little fill in over here. It's looking like too much canvas is coming through. Again, I'm gonna step back, and I'm feeling pretty confident about that. So. Again, we're going to go ahead and we're going to let that dry. Let me give you a closer up version of that so you can see what we did here. Right, again, you can kind of see the three different layers. You can see the core, which is the really light yellow. You can see my yellow layer, and then that kind of bluish layer on the outside. So we've kind of got our nice halo done. And the last thing we're going to do when we come back after this dries is we're going to add in the manger, we're going to add in the star, and then the ground at the bottom. So wash your brushes out, get them good and dry, and come back in a few minutes when this is dry, and we'll go ahead and we'll start to add. Welcome back. It's time for us to paint that little manger. So go ahead and get the cutout that you have in your kit, or if you didn't buy the kit, again, you're just going to cut out this little trapezoid. Size-wise, if you're cutting your own, you can kind of gauge it from here. You can see that, just so you can see, it's about 1/3 of the width of my total circle. So you want that manger to be about 1/3 of the width of the total diameter of the circle. And we're gonna just pencil this in down here. I like it to sit kind of in the center and maybe right in between the blue and the yellow layer. And I'm just gonna do a really light pencil trace of this. It's a little harder for me to do when I'm standing sideways. I'm a little worried I'm going to have it crooked, so I'm going to take a look at it here. Yep, I got it a little crooked, so I'm just going to redraw it because I can. Don't worry, you're not going to see the pencil because we're going to go outside of it. So just going to rough in the pencil. You can see. I don't know, you see it? Just barely see. I've roughed in the pencil there. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to paint that using just the plain black. So you're going to want to get your medium round brush ready and get some more black paint on your paint. Go ahead and use the same area of your plate that you used to do your background. And once you get that ready, we'll paint that manger in. Okay, so we're ready to paint that in. You can see I used my same old paint. I've got my medium-sized round brush, and I'm going to go ahead and get a little paint on this brush. I'm going to kind of go around the edges of this and then just fill it in. This does not have to be a perfect shape, right? So don't worry about that. It's probably good if you can cover your pencil lines up, but my guess is you're not even really going to see them that much, because remember, we're going to do that straw that's hanging over the edges of the manger. So even if, like, I can see some of my pencil edges on the top here, but I'm not worried about it because I'm going to have that overhanging brown and gold from the straw in the manger that covers that up. So I'm not even going to be worried about giving this another coat, I don't think, but I'll take a look at it and see what I think. I'm going to get in here and make sure it's nice and even. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to give it another coat of black, just because I feel like I can see the yellow through. And then once that's dry, we'll be ready to go on to the next step. So 1 or 2 coats of black, get it dried real good, maybe pull your hair dryer out, and then we'll go ahead and we'll start to add some of the other details in. Okay, you can see I moved in a little closer so that you can see what I'm doing. We're getting ready to put the straw in the manger. I'm going to grab our finished picture just so you can see up close. So this is really a bunch of little tiny brush strokes, and you can see we've done brown. There's some of the yellow in there, and there's a little bit of white. And the brush is not loaded with paint. I wouldn't say it's dry, but it's definitely not loaded with paint. And one thing that I think is really important for this is that we want to mix some white in with our other colors. So you can see on my plate I have still a bunch of my white from when I did the blue circle. I've added some brown, and I've brought a little bit of the yellow in. And I've got my smallest brush, and I'm gonna start with the brown, and I'm gonna pick up a little bit of the white, and I'm gonna mix it in with my brown. And it doesn't really change the color of the brown that much, but it turns out that that white just kind of makes the brown cover a little bit better. And so then I'm gonna go in, and I'm just gonna, remember the straw is kind of coming up and out of the manger, so I'm gonna go in with little strokes like this, and I'm gonna do them in these different directions, right? All the way around. And again, I'm gonna mix a little bit of white in with that brown, just so that I get a little bit better coverage. And don't worry if it looks a little thin right now, because we're just gonna keep going in there and doing more and more strokes to get this looking like we want to. So I'm gonna do some of them a little longer, some of them can be a little shorter, and we're gonna do some various mixing here. Now I think I'm gonna want a little bit darker brown for part of this, so I'm actually gonna pick up a little bit of the black now and mix that in with the brown so I can get a little darker brown in there. So I'm back on my black tray, and I just picked up a little bit of the black to mix in, and I'm gonna go in and do a few more streaks with this guy. And again, I wanna get that in and over. But remember, it's straw, so it should look rough. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mix a little bit of the yellow in with that brown. So I kind of have a little bit of a brownish yellow here. I'm gonna get most of the paint off my brush. I'm gonna go in and add some of the yellow streaks in there. And again, different widths, different lengths. If you're not happy with the way this paint is covering, don't worry about it. We can layer it on. So I'm gonna pick up some more, I'm gonna pull this around, and now I'm just gonna kind of give it almost like a real regular motion here as I come around and just kind of pull this around, Okay. And you might want to let it dry in between these different layers. I'd say we're probably going to do 2 or 3 of these layers because, again, we want to get some coverage. We want to cover over that dark part that we see. We only want a little bit of that showing through. We're going to add some plain white in here, some streaks as well. That gives it a little more depth and dimension if we add some white streaks in there. Try not to be too planning of this. This is one of the hardest things for me when I do art. Is I like things to be all even, and so it's really hard for me to go in and have it be random. Maybe I'm going to mix a little bit of white with the yellow now, so I get a little bit of a yellowish white. So really, we're just taking those three colors that we have: the white, the brown, and the yellow. And we're getting the different dimensional colors of the straw. So I think I'm gonna quit there because, again, I don't wanna overdo it. I'll show you close up what I've got. Now you might say, well, I think that you should probably get some better coverage there. It seems like a lot of the black is showing through. Well, we can definitely go in and go over that again. What we might wanna do if we want better coverage is we'll probably want this layer to dry, and then we'll go in with the same colors again and just randomly add more color. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry, and then I'm gonna come back and do a second layer on this, and then I'm gonna show you how we're gonna add some dimension to the manger. So you've got me just adding some of my very last white streaks in here. I did decide to go in and add another layer in there. I wanted a little bit more coverage over the dark part, and I think I'm pretty happy with it. One of the nice things about acrylics, remember, is that you don't have to live with it, right? If you decide, ooh, I don't think I like this at all, you can go in and paint over it and start again. So you could just go in there with your black And you could paint over this again, and then you could start adding the straw in again. So I'm pretty happy with this straw, and so I'm gonna get ready to go on to the next portion of this. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna add that black on the bottom that is the ground, so that that has a chance to dry, so we can go in and add the snow and some of the dimension on the manger, and then we'll finish off with our star. So go ahead and get your the brush that you did the background on and a little bit more pure black paint on your plate, and meet me back here, and we will go ahead and we will finish the ground part of this picture. Okay, we're gonna add the ground on now, and the ground in our picture, it just kind of is an arc that goes across the bottom. So again, it's gonna arc, and that's gonna meet the bottom of that manger, not go too far up, and then come across. So I'm actually taking my brush, it just has a little bit of water on it because I just washed it. I'm gonna get an idea of the arc that I want. You'll notice I made a little splop of black when I was painting my manger, but I wasn't worried about it because I knew I was gonna go in and do this. Flat brush, I'm gonna use the edge of it, and I'm just gonna go in, and I'm gonna swoop up to it, over and down. Right, so that's my ground. And again, it looks probably funny to you because it's got that glare, but it's just plain black. And so then I'm gonna go in with my black, and again, just this edge of the brush, and I'm gonna go in and add the strokes in to add this ground cover. I think that we are probably going to see the brush strokes on this a little bit, and so I think it's important that we use that edge of the brush as we go in and create that ground, right? So again, I'm just gonna fill that in. Again, mine looks pretty glowy to you, but that's just because of the light here. It's really just plain black. Now, as I'm looking here, I'm seeing that I might like to do another, I'm thinking I might want to do a little bit more just to get some coverage as I'm going over that yellow, but I'm not going to be too worried about that because remember, we're going to do the snow highlights on there, and that's already going to add some white back in. So I'm probably just going to go in with just a little bit more paint as it is and add that in. And then again, we're gonna need to let that dry before we add in some of the snow details. In the meantime, we can get ready. We have two other things we have to do besides the snow details. We have our star to put at the top, and we also have the little halo at the top of the manger. And we're gonna need some white paint for the star, and we're gonna need some yellow and white paint for the halo. If you got your kit from Creative 360, you got a tiny little bit of gold paint as well, and I'm going to use that in the halo, but you might decide you want to use it in the star as well. So as this black dries, I'm going to go get my yellow, my white, and a little bit of gold, and my fine brush so that I can do the halo and the star while this is drying. Get this flat brush into the water to get this black paint off it because we're going to want to use it potentially at the end to add those snow highlights. We're almost done. We need to put the star in, the little halo, and then we're going to do the snow at the bottom of the manger. So let me show you those two on the original picture first so you can see where we're going. So the star is really very simple. It is really just two overlapping crosses, and so I'm going to do these four first, and then I'm going to add these in afterwards. My star on this one is plain white. It actually looks really nice if you do it with this blue color that you did for the outer ring as well, or if you want to pick up some of the shiny gold. The key is to not get too much paint on your brush here because you really want a nice fine line for this star. So we're going to do our star first, then we're going to add the halo in. And you'll notice the halo is just an oval that's a little thicker in the front than it is in the back. And again, real simple, I'm going to do a mixture of yellow and white and a little bit of the gold paint for that guy, okay? So I've got my thinnest brush. One thing that I sometimes do when I have to paint something really fine like this star is I'll get a little water on my brush and I'll just go in and try to do it with water first, just to make sure I get a sense of how much paint I'm going to want on my brush. The other thing that you might want to do is thin out your white paint just a little bit, because you can get a little finer line if it's not so clumpy. And you can always go over the star twice if you need to. So I'm gonna get a little bit of water on my brush. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna pick up this white paint, and I'm actually gonna get the white with a little bit of blue on it from the outer ring. I need some more water here because I definitely don't want it clumpy. You don't want it too runny because you don't want your star running down your canvas, of course. But you don't want too much paint loaded onto your brush. And I'm gonna be rude and turn my back to you now because I really want to be straight onto this canvas as I do the 2 vertical parts and the 2 horizontal parts. The vertical parts are a little longer than the horizontal parts. So I'm gonna get right in the center of my canvas here. And you can see I just did my 2 verticals. Okay, sorry about that. I got a phone call in the middle of painting the star. So I have the 2 verticals done, and I did the 2 horizontals while my phone was ringing. What I was telling you, which you weren't hearing, is that I didn't load my brush up with any more paint when I went to do the horizontals on this, because I'd really rather go in a second time if I need to than get too much paint blopped on this brush. So now I'm gonna go in, now that I have the 4 main lines, I'm gonna go in with a little bit more paint on my brush. Again, I'm wiping a lot of it off, and I'm gonna add the shorter lines in. And so we've got a little short one here and here, and then a little short one here and here. And do they need to be perfect? No, don't worry about it. You're not gonna notice it. You might wanna put a little circle in the center of the star, so it actually looks kind of pretty if you have a little dot right in the middle. So again, if I would go light on the paint with this guy, and then you can always go over it again if you need to. The same is going to be true for this halo. So I'm going to go ahead in there with white, and I'm going to kind of sketch out my oval for the halo, and then I'm going to go ahead and go over it. Remember, the halo is a little bit thicker in the front than it is in the back. Now you can't see what I'm doing here. I can barely see what I'm doing here, but it's giving me the sense of how big I want it. Let me get this closer to see if you can see it. Right, do you see that just tiny little white that I put in there? That's where my halo is gonna be, and I'm gonna add now some gold and some yellow over that, but at least, you know, I have an idea of the shape, because you don't want it too big, right? It's just gonna look kind of silly if it's too big. So I'm doing a little bit of white mixed with my yellow and my gold, all 3 of them. So I'm just getting a nice mix. Again, not real homogeneous because I want it to, I want it to be kind of uneven looking, and I'm just gonna go around that oval. And I'll go over it a couple times. Again, I want it a little thicker in the front to show some perspective. But this is a real subtle thing in the picture, right? You don't want it to be too obvious. I'm actually gonna go over this with a little bit of white because I'm thinking it looks a little too yellowish. So I'm gonna add a tiny bit of white in here to go over it, and I'm gonna add a tiny bit of the gold and blend that in too. This would look real nice if you had glitter paint also. That would be real pretty. Again, don't overdo this because it's a real subtle, interesting part of the picture. So I'm gonna show you a close-up here again. Real subtle. That's a real subtle piece of the picture, I think. Okay, so we've got the star on the top. We did the halo in there, and now the only thing we have left to do is to add the snow. So you're gonna need that kind of rough brush, and it's gonna need to be pretty dry, and you're gonna need some white paint. So go ahead and grab that, and we'll finish this guy up. All right, we're almost done. So I changed my mind. I'm gonna use my flat brush for 2 reasons. One, because I feel like I have a little more control, and I like this nice skinny edge. But also, I did something bad. I didn't put my rough brush in the water after I was done doing the blue ring, and now it's kind of clumpy with blue paint, and I'm not sure I'm gonna get much control on it. So lesson learned for me, get your brushes in the water right after you use them or you won't be happy. All right, so before you go into this snow thing, remember, you can't really make a mistake, because if you don't like the way it looks, you're just gonna paint black over it and you'll do it again. So don't be worried. But I'm gonna show you something on our original picture. This is really just highlight that we're going for here. And so what we're trying to get at is get a little bit of depth in the manger. You can see those little bit of white lines are giving it a little bit of a curved look, so just a little bit. And then we're just going kind of across the top of that ridge with a few little lines in here. It's giving the idea of reflection off the ground from that big glowing star. So a little goes a long way here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with that little bit of reflection on the ridge. So I'm going to take some white paint on the edge of this brush here, and I'm not worried about having a nice thick line. I'm just going to kind of go over in little dashes kind of the top of my ridge. So just a few, I don't want a straight on broken line. And then maybe I'll go in just a little bit underneath it with a few, maybe a few down here. I'm kind of almost barely touching the paper with this brush, okay? And what you can do if you're thinking, ooh, that's a little too white, I don't like it, wipe all the paint off your brush and then just go in there and you can kind of dry brush it out, right? You can spread it out a little bit. You could go back in and add more black if you want to. If you don't like the way this looks, we can go in and add more black. I'm feeling like I maybe have a little bit too much white on here, and I feel like I could have gone to the edge here more. But I'm gonna go back and add some black in after. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of the white that's from my snow, and that's what I'm gonna use to go in here and just kind of in a sweeping, a curving motion. I'm just gonna hit that manger, and again, I'm just picking up a little bit of the white from my snow, right? I don't want too much. I just want enough, and it looks like a lot, I think, because of the glare, but you can see if I get close up, you're seeing mostly glare there. There's not a lot of white there that I've picked up. Now again, I feel like I've got a little bit too much white in my snow, so I'm gonna pick up some black from here, and I'm just gonna go back in with some black and add a little black back in here, which works out just fine, right? Again, it's really just gonna give the idea of the snow on top. Once that dries, it'll be that nice flat black color again. And so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get my dryer and dry this and see if there's any changes I wanna make to that snow before I sign my name to it. So once I hit this with a blow dryer, I decided I was actually pretty happy with it. I actually think I'm gonna put a little bit more snow in, kind of more glowy stuff towards the top there, and I'm gonna pull in actually a little bit of that gold paint in there because I just kind of want to see what it looks like. So I'm gonna get a little bit more white and gold on my brush, and I'm just gonna come in here a little bit with a few more streaks. Again, just barely touching the canvas, and different lengths, right, of streaks. Not all of them should be long. That's kind of what I've been doing here. But I'm pretty happy with that. Again, feel free to go in with more black or more white as you need to. If I tip that forward, you can see that it's not quite as shiny as it looks when it's tipped back like that. So we're done. You can go ahead and sign this. It actually looks really nice signed with the gold paint in the corner. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had a great time, and I hope you enjoyed this complimentary video painting with Creative 360. We're going to have a lot more painting classes coming up in the new year, so please keep your eyes open. Check us out on our website, which is becreative360.org. Thanks, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday.